All right, hello everybody. Today's session of Infotouch University Online is concerning the the Transaction Manager module. This module exists in both Storekeeper POS and in Store Manager, and is a very important back office module that is a good thing to be familiar with, especially once you get your customers up and going and live. They're going to be using this module on a very regular basis. It's not typically one that you spend a lot of time with on demos, but in real world of store operations, it's extremely important. So you'll notice that there are 7 rather larger buttons, and those are all standard functions. In addition, you'll notice that there are 3 smaller kind of rectangular orange buttons that represent options. So you may or may not see these on the systems that you sell, depending on what you order. So we're not going to go into the options in any detail today. Those would be subjects for a different webinar. However, I will briefly mention what they are just so you're familiar with them. So if you have bought the GL interface, and that is an optional add-on that allows our software to talk to either QuickBooks or Peachtree, then you operate the GL interface from here, and this is one that I haven't even started with today, so we won't get into it. As I said, this is really a reasonable topic for another webinar. But in the GL interface, you would basically tie things like sales by tender, taxes collected, cost of goods sold by department of things in our POS side into either QuickBooks or Peachtree. And as I'm sure you all know, QuickBooks is like 99% more popular than Peachtree these days, but we still support both of them. And you can transfer information from our software to the general ledger. It is at a high-level general journal interface level. That is to say, we are not sending over specific quantities of inventory items on hand, but we will, for example, send over sales for a department like haircuts or the amount of cash collected. So enough on that. Another option that we have had several webinars at this point on is the appointment book. And if you don't have that, you won't see this button here. And this allows you to set up the various parameters associated with how you want your appointment book to operate. The third and final option, and it's not really an option anymore, but is called Touch Data Link. It originally was an option, and it was something you had to buy. And Touch Data Link is used, its original purpose was to allow us to operate in a multi-store environment. So when you are using Store Manager at stores and Enterprise Manager at headquarters, Touch Data Link is the piece within the Store Manager side of things that actually prepares all the transactions that happen during the day and sends out information to Enterprise. At the same time, it accepts updates from Enterprise for new items, price changes, updates to customer information, you name it. So Touch Data Link is not something that really has a user interface per se. It generally operates in the background. Some years ago, we decided to incorporate this as a standard part of the product. So there is a way of disabling it. You have to rename a file, basically, but you will find that all of your software out of the box, including all of the demo verticals, will have this Touch Data Link button. It also is a subject for a completely separate and fairly technical webinar. So those are our options. Everything else you see here is standard. So let's get started and see what we have here. And I'm going to start off with gift certificates. And what you're going to see here is actually something none of you have seen before, because we're about to come out with a new release and we've made some modifications to the gift certificate function. So you're going to get a bit of a preview of that right now. So if you go into your current version, you would see a button in the middle here called Modify Gift Certificates, and that's not available. So let's talk about what we mean with gift certificates. A gift certificate is something we have supported for a long time. It used to be something that stores would print up typically on a nice piece of paper and give to a customer, and it would be obviously in exchange for some money and allow them or somebody they give the gift certificate to use it in the store to buy goods. So very common function and still is today. We usually use the gift certificate terminology today to talk about a certificate, if you would, although these days cards are probably more common. But in any case, we use that terminology to talk about something that is verified within the store as opposed to externally. When we talk about external gifts, we usually use the term gift card at that point. Verification. So for example, we support gift cards through Mercury. If you are using Store Manager and PC Charge, currently the only gift card that is something externally verified, just like kind of like a credit card, is from First Data. We are thinking about adding some more options there, but at least today that would be your only choice on the PC Charge Store Manager side. But we also do work with it with Mercury. And also with Sterling, I should mention as well. So, but lots of stores don't want to have to go through the hassle of getting the cards. They want to be able to give out something to their customers directly and be able to track it internally. And in that case, we use gift certificates. And in order for gift certificates to be tracked, actually, let me switch back for a second to the main menu and go into Setup. And under Optional Tenders, if you want a gift certificate, there's actually an option for 3 different tender types, of which you're either going to use 1 or 2. So right now, for example, we have a tender type called Issue GC. You can call it whatever you like in terms of the name of it, but this is used for issuing gift certificates. Issuing is the process of the customer giving you money in exchange for you giving them that certificate that they can later use. In the gift card world, that function is usually called activate, but it's essentially exactly the same concept. And what you want to do if you want to track it locally, that is, have a database internally of gift certificates, is to set the authorization type to authorization local. Note that you can also, authorization gift card, by the way, means we're going to go ahead and dial out and try and externally verify it like with a Mercury gift card. You can have an option for only record number, and what that means is we'll prompt you for the gift certificate number, but we're not actually going to track it. We'll just accept it. So for example, if you're in a mall and that mall issues gift certificates that you don't know about but you're going to accept, you can go ahead and set it up to only record number. But most folks are going to want to track the gift certificate balance. So if I issue a gift certificate for $50, I use $20, I want to know that I've got $30 left. Authorization type should be local. And in this case, we have 2 separate tender types, one for issuing and the other for redeeming. The other option that you could have here is one type that works for both issuing and redeeming. And again, authorization local means we're going to track it in the local database. And in that case, instead of having 2 separate tender types, you only have one. Most people actually use the 2 separate tender types, and the reason has to do with the way it rings up at the point of sale. And the way you balance things on the shift reports. When you use one tender type, issuing gift certificates comes out as a negative number. We have to have some way of distinguishing the fact that it's been issued versus the fact that it's been received. And if you think about it, a gift certificate is essentially a tender exchange. So if I pay you $10 for a gift certificate with cash, I'm going to offset that $10 with a minus $10 associated with the issuing process. With one tender, you would actually have a receipt that said gift certificate minus 10, cash plus 10, balance 0. Most people find that very confusing. So if you separate the two tender types into issue and redeem, then at that point we know when we're using issuing type what we're doing, and we drop the minus sign. So it looks more intuitive to people, and it also helps them when they're counting up their cash drawers. So I'll just leave that at that for right now, and we'll go back to the Transaction Manager module. So if you are going to track gift certificates locally, the first thing you have to do is you have to create them. And you can either create an individual gift certificate number or a range of them. Now, if any of you are familiar with this process in the current version you have, you will be noticing that there's a field called amount here that is no longer there. And I will explain why in just a minute. So let's start with an individual gift certificate. We'll call it Keith 1. And that's it. We now have a gift certificate in the system that can be issued and then later redeemed, called Keith 1. But that's kind of cumbersome, especially since people will often, when they're doing a print up of these things, go through a range. And so we support an automatic range for you. So let's say you wanted to have certificates called My Beauty Salon, and you wanted to issue 100 of them. Well, what you can do is just go start at 1 and just type in 100, and the software actually automatically fills it out to 6 digits for you. And if I hit save, I now have literally just in that quick half second created 100 gift certificates. And they're called MBS-001, 002, etc. Okay, let's take a look now at how those are used in the register. So we're in the beauty salon here, and a gift certificate is considered a part of the other tender types. Now, one of the things you should know about our software in general is that we don't like you to tender things before there are any line items. On the other hand, when you're trying to sell a gift certificate or issue one, really selling is not the correct term. From an accounting point of view, by the way, again, a gift certificate issue is a tender exchange. It is not a sale. So in order to simplify the process, when you go ahead and hit other tenders, and you'll notice it even has that gift picture on it to indicate this is one of the most common uses of other tenders, it'll ask you, well, do you want to issue reload or balance? So we'll say issue reload, and it actually at that point creates a line item for us, and it's just kind of satisfying the software internally, quite honestly. So let's say I wanted to issue it for $100. Okay, tell me what the gift certificate number is. And I thought I put that in correctly, but maybe I didn't. So let's try MBS-0000. Okay, well, we're having a little glitch here. It's not finding those gift certificates I just created, but normally what would happen here is you would, I don't know. Okay, sorry about that. Normally what would happen is at this point you'd put in the gift certificate number, and then it would say, okay, tell me how you would like to pay for that. And you could pick any of the normal tender types, and at that point the gift certificate would be issued. Now, if you look real carefully here, I'm going to clear the sale out and start again. The thing that has changed and why the amount field is no longer in the gift certificate function is that one of the drawbacks of the way we have been doing gift certificates as opposed to gift cards is that once you issue it and you use it up in the current version of the software you have, that's it. You cannot put more money on it. It's done. Well, people are used to more of the gift card type of functionality where I've got this card, yeah, I've used it up, I want to put another 50 bucks on it. So you'll notice now that this button, which used to just say issue, says issue/reload. And we now do allow you to put additional money, or we will as soon as release 2 is out the door, which should be next week. We do allow you to put additional money onto an existing gift certificate, which is something people have been requesting for quite a while. The trade-off there is that that amount field that I mentioned is no longer available here. Used to be used to predetermine a gift certificate amount. In other words, you could create an individual or range of gift certificates that would be predefined to say be for $25. You no longer can do that. So when you issue a gift certificate, you can today put in any amount you want. And the very big plus side for getting rid of that function, which not a lot of people used, is that you can now add money to a gift certificate after it has been used up. And that has been a highly requested feature. In addition to creating gift certificates, if you made a mistake, you can delete them. You can either delete a range of them, and you get a drop-down list of all the ones in the system. Oh, you know what? I think I see my problem here. Let's go back to the register for a second and see if I can correct from what I just did here. Say we want to do 100 MBS. There we go. I put a dash after the MBS and the number, and that's not correct. It's just the prefix that you put in followed directly by the number. So now we are going to issue this certificate for 100 bucks. How are we going to pay for it? With cash? Fine. We just did that. Now this again is not a sale, but it is now a gift certificate that a customer can use. When a gift certificate, once it's been issued and used at all, even just issued, you can't delete it anymore. At that point, somebody's got money, you've got a liability to them. But if you do have gift certificates that have been created perhaps by mistake and you want to get rid of them, then the delete gift certificate function allows you to delete either an individual one, and it gives you a drop-down box of all the ones you can delete, or a range of them as well. So that's gift certificates, not a big function. We'll see in a little bit that there is a report associated with gift certificates as well. It has 2 flavors. You can see all gift certificate activity for the day within the store, or you can get a report on all the gift certificates or a range of them that you have outstanding. Okay, let's go next to reason codes. And again, I'm going to come back to the register module. There are a variety of transaction types that you can do in the register where we want to track why you're doing it. These are generally sensitive things. For example, the first one you can see is paid out. So if you're going to take money out of the drawer that is no longer going to my bank account, I want to know why. And all of these reason code types default to being type 1, 2, 3 through 9 and keyboard. So let's do a paid out in the register module. That's typically under the manager menu. Cash transactions, paid out, tell me why, and there's those reasons. The keyboard one, by the way, always is there to allow you to put in a free form reason. So if it's not one of the above ones and you want to be able to say, you know, I am stealing, you don't get a lot of words here, how about we'll just a lot of characters. Just say stealing, and I'm going to take out $10. You can do that. Or, you know, much more commonly, you wind up using one of the predefined things like, you know, hey, I'm paying for supplies. There are actually 5 different types of transactions where we allow you to separately put in the reason codes associated with them. Paid ins, no sales, return sales, and post voids. So on any of those transaction types, if you try to do something, it is going to first insist you tell us, why are you doing this? What's the reason code? That information typically gets saved off in things like the register detail report, which is a very important report. We'll go over that one for sure. And in some cases in the electronic journal. For example, if you do a post void, the reason for the post void shows up in the electronic journal. So this is where you set up your reason codes. You don't really have to bother with them if you don't want to, but it does give you an opportunity to track information about your system and how it's used. Okay, I'm going to skip around a little bit, and I think I'm going to go first to a couple of smaller functions. Let's start with delete suspended transactions. And we'll go around the horn here. We'll cover everything. There's a reason why I'm doing it this way. You'll see in a minute. Okay, both products of our POS products actually support up to 5 different types of suspended transactions. You'll notice there's only 4 checkboxes here, but in any case, let's talk about them. So we have hold sales. Hold sale or a suspended sale is something where somebody comes in, they ring up some items, they go to pay for it, and they forgot their checkbook, they want to go out to the car, you suspend the sale. Or maybe they call in an order and they tell you, I'm going to be in later, you suspend the sale, and you're able to recall it very quickly and easily afterwards. Any suspended sale, by the way, can be recalled at any register. There's a huge different number of options when recalling suspended sales. Let's show you that for a second. So you can recall them by date, by the number that's printed on the ticket if you gave them one. If the sale is not linked to a customer record, we will prompt you for an ID. Usually it's the person's first name, but it's whatever you want to put in. And you can recall it by that, by the employee, by the customer number, the customer name. So lots and lots of ways to recall suspended transactions. Okay, but sometimes these things stay in the system for a long time and they get out of date. So if I made maybe somebody called in an order August 1st, 2009, they never came in for it and they never did business with us again, I'd like to be able to clear that out. Well, you can clear it out one by one by actually recalling the transaction and deleting it, but that's fairly cumbersome if you have a lot of them. So the delete suspended transaction range function allows you to do this by date, and you can select which type of suspended transactions you want to delete. And in addition to hold sales, customer waiting orders or special orders, quotes, and appointments. Okay, I mentioned there's 5 in different types of these, and one of them is not here, and that's layaways. The reason layaways is not here is that we will not allow you to delete a suspended transaction with a deposit. And typically layaways always require deposits. Of all of the other types you see here, customer waiting orders or special orders have an optional deposit. So since you may not have a deposit, we do allow you the option to select this type of transaction. But do note that if you have a customer waiting order or special order with a deposit, you cannot delete it using this function. It will simply skip over it because you owe that money back to the customer. In fact, in many states, it's a legal requirement for your store to refund the money to the customer. So if there's a deposit, it's not going to be deleted. That's why layaways don't show up at all. These other types, hold sales, quotes, and appointments, do not allow deposits at all, so you can always get rid of them. So basically, you select your date range using the standard calendar kind of functions. You hit OK, and it does it. So that's all there is to it. It's very straightforward, but it's just a little maintenance tool for getting rid of old suspended transactions that you no longer want to keep anymore. Okay, another function that we see here is the cash drawers function. And you'll notice on top the number of registers. In this case, this salon is set up for 1, but we do support up to 60 registers per store in each of Store Manager and Storekeeper. And you can also go ahead and actually have 2 drawers per register. So this information is being pulled from setup and it can't be modified. It's just there to help you out. So for each of your registers, you can decide what the closing keep is. Okay, what is the closing keep? It is our term, at least, for the amount of money you typically leave in the cash drawer at the end of a shift. And in most stores, that's a constant amount. So something like $100 or $200. So when I am a clerk and I'm doing my shift closeout and I'm counting up my money in the drawer, I leave $100 or whatever that amount is in the drawer for the next person. Or even if I don't leave it in there, we're going to assume that the next person is going to bring $100 and put it in the drawer, because essentially what we're saying is there is a standard amount that is left that you start your shift out with. And when we go and count up the money at the end of the shift, we subtract that closing keep amount from the amount of money you count up, so we know how much you actually took in extra that needs to go to the bank. You can have a separate amount for each register. If you have 2 drawers, and that is a possibility, per register, then there's buttons that will show up here as to whether you're setting this information up for the primary or alternate drawer. And so you can basically, for each of your maximum of 120 drawers, 60 times 2, have a separate closing keep amount for each one. Most stores don't do that. They have the same amount per drawer, per register, and they keep it that way. It is, by the way, possible to change this amount as part of the shift closeout process. So if I do a shift closeout, you'll notice here's the closing keep. So I could change this. By the way, changing this is subject to security. There is an option to say it requires, say, a manager override in order to do that, but you can theoretically change the closing keep as part of the closeout process. Very few people use that. So typically what everybody does is when they start up the system, they decide how much money they're going to keep in each drawer as a standard amount at the start of the shift, and they put that number in, and we save it off, and that's it. So, but it's important because you do start off your shifts with a certain amount of money in the drawer, and we need to know what that amount is in order to properly determine whether you're over or short. Okay. Next topic is transaction reports. And as in many of the back office modules, you can see that there are, in fact, quite a few transaction reports. We're going to go over just some of the highlights. By the way, all of these reports can be accessed right here from the Windows menu, so you don't have to go directly into this area that we're seeing right now. I could, for example, come out here and say I want to run the Register Daily report. And there's no difference between doing that and having come in and hit Register Daily. So just different options. Register Daily is an important report. It's basically a summary of what's happened in your store for the day. It does have an option to report on all registers or for the register you're on only. Now, do recall with both of our products, any module can be run on any register. So if I'm on register number 3 up front and I just want to see what's happened on my register during the day, I can do that. And I can run this module and run this report. But for the most part, people just want to see what's happened for the store for the day. We fairly recently added a new option to include department sales on here. Let's go ahead and check that, see what it looks like. and we'll go ahead and send that to the screen. And please bear in mind this is demonstration data that's been hanging around for a while, so the numbers are going to be kind of wild and woolly, but they are what they are, and they will reflect, in fact, what you have at the store. So we started off this shift with $100. That's that closing keep amount we talked about before. During this shift, it's been a pretty busy one. Actually, or this day rather, we've taken $81 in, 81 cash sales in for 5,400 and something bucks. We did 2 paid outs for $30. Remember, we did one of them just recently. No paid ins, no cash change. Okay, let's talk for a second. What is cash change? Because cash change affects the money going to the bank. So in most stores, for example, if I pay with a credit card on a $100 sale, I cannot pay more than $100 and ask them for money back. On the other hand, with a debit card, it's very common for people to want to pay for a little bit more and get some cash back. In some stores, when you pay by check, it is not uncommon, well, it's not totally uncommon at least, for the store to allow you to write a check for more than the amount of the sale and give you some money back. So when the amount tendered is greater than the amount of the sale and the customer gets cash back, we call that cash change. And we need to know about that because that money is not going to our bank account. Okay, in this case we don't have any, so we started with 100, we did all this stuff. So we think the total amount of the money in the cash that the store took in today is $5,539 and change. Now, out of that, we still expect to leave $100 in the drawer. Now, in this case, bear in mind, this is a 1-register store. If this was a 3-register store and each of them had $100 as their closing keep amount, these numbers would be 300 and 300. And normally, in most cases, since people don't change that amount, this beginning cash and the closing keep just net each other out. So we took in $5,400 and change. Now, on the right-hand side, we're seeing a couple of columns for actual and over shorts. Now, hopefully all of you have been through some of the standard intro demos here and have seen us go through the shift closeout process where we count up the money in the drawer and then print out a report based on what you told us and what we thought you had as to what the over short amount is. Those totals for all drawers for all registers for the day are totaled up in this report. So as of right now, and the day's not over, so we could do another shift closeout and potentially get back into balance here. But as of right now, we are way short of where we think we're supposed to be. And this report is one that typically comes out at the end of the day to show you for your store whether you were over or short by tender type. So we see the same thing with check sales, where here we're $19 short, a little closer. So our bank deposit, which is the sum of the cash and the checks that were counted up, is this, 2,400 and change, which means we're way, way off and somebody needs to be fired. But normally these numbers will hopefully be closer to in balance. In fact, hopefully they're completely in balance and your over shorts are 0 and your actuals, in fact, exactly match the amounts. But it doesn't happen all that way. Sometimes people are stealing, and this is a report that will help you catch that. Okay. In addition to cash and checks, we're also going to give you a summary of all the other tender types that this store takes, the optional tenders. Very typically nowadays, we don't even ask you to count this up. If I do a Visa sale and it's cleared for $167, my bank account is today or tomorrow going to get $167. I don't need the clerk to bother with that. That money is safe. Same thing, by the way, for customer charges or receivables. If the system has tracked and recorded a sale where a customer charged $31.50 to his accounts receivable. Well, that's in the system, and he's going to get a statement for it at the end of the month that's going to include that amount. So we don't have to worry about that money going to the bank. So this section is mostly just telling you how many and the grand total of the different other tender types you've taken. You can actually tell the system to make the clerk count these numbers up and see if you're over or short, but we would recommend against it. There's no really good reason to do that anymore. There was in the old days. We've been around for long enough that there was a time at which people had to count up their credit card slips and send them to the bank, but those days, thankfully, are long gone. Okay, we have some more information here besides the tender types. A special line for deposits applied. Where does that come from? Okay, I mentioned, for example, we take layaways. So somebody comes in, they do a layaway for $100. They give us a $20 deposit and need to come back to us and pay us the rest of the amount over time. That's fine. That $20, though, is going to the bank today. And when they come back in and they pay the remaining $80 and turn that layaway into a sale, we have to account for the fact that, hey, this is a $100 sale. They only gave us $80. How do we make this balance? Well, we have a special tender for deposits applied. So at that point, you would see when they turn that layaway into a sale that $20 would show up here, because this is money that is not going to be in the sales figures, or excuse me, is going to be in the sales figures, but is not going to the bank. If you do credit card type tips, we usually call those gratuities, you'll get a little special line for that as well. And then you get some summary information about what happened during the day at the store. So we have 93 sales for $6,200. We didn't do any returns or refunds today, thankfully, but if we did, they'd show up here, and then we get a net. We get some information about the gross sales. So this $6,200 actually includes tax. The amount here does not include tax. Discounts, taxable sales, tax collected, how many post voids we did during the day, how many no sales we did. I mentioned things like special customer options like layaways and customer waiting orders, and of course we have receivables, so a customer may come in and make a payment. Those are not sales activities, but they're money going to the bank, so we are accounting for it here. And if we go to our second page, we also have the opposite end of that. For example, somebody might come in and say, that layaway that I gave you $20 on, I want to delete it. I don't want it anymore. Give me my money back. And again, in many states, you have to give them their money back. So we have to account for that as well. And I checked that option showing that we wanted to get a summary of department sales. So during this day, we did 127 haircuts, totaling 3,000, 25 perms, 942, etc. So a very basic common report, the Register Daily Report. Another report that you're going to want to use on a regular basis is Register Detail. This comes in some flavors, including for all registers or this register only, but usually you'll want to look at it for the whole store. It also has flavors of today's or select range. So today's will show us interesting things, and we'll talk about interesting in a second, that happened at the store for today. Or we may decide we want to take a look at this over a date range, but let's go for today's for right now. And what the Register Detail Report is about is showing you things that are kind of exceptions that you might want to know about. So for example, we did 2 paid outs today. By the way, you notice that our first paid out is back in May. Important point to note here in terms of closeouts that as far as our software is concerned, a day is the time between 2 daily closeouts. a month is the time between two monthly closeouts. It has nothing to do with the calendar. So that's actually useful in a lot of cases. For example, if I'm in a store that's open after midnight and I close my store at 2 o'clock in the morning, well, my day is going to include the sales after midnight up until 2. Or some retailers use what's called a 13-month calendar, where they have 4 weeks on some months and 5 weeks on others. And there's reasons why some, especially larger retailers, do that. We have no problem dealing with that because we are not using the calendar to determine what the month is. We're using your pressing of the daily or weekly or monthly or yearly closeout button. And I haven't obviously pressed it in quite some time. So we've done 2 paid outs for $30. Here's the description, including the stealing one I did just a few minutes ago, and they were both done by employee number 1. Anytime we do a post-transaction void, we want to record that and alert you to the fact that somebody voided a sale. So when a sale is completed and tendered, you cannot modify it. The only thing you can do is post-void it. And that undoes all the effects of a sale. And we want to record that because that is a potential fraud situation. So customer comes in, says, here's $100 for X, Y, and Z. Thank you very much. Customer walks out the door. Employee voids the sale and puts the $100 in their pocket. Well, they may put the $100 in their pocket, but they're going to be on record as having post-voided the sale at a specific date, time, register, what the invoice number was, the amount, the reason code they selected for post-voiding the sale. All that's recorded, cannot be gotten rid of. By the way, this invoice number 46 is still in the electronic journal. You cannot get rid of it. So the full audit trail of exactly what happened and why is always going to be available. Every time somebody does a no sale to open a drawer, even though that's a very common operation, we're going to track it for you. When they do customer special options, like for example, making a special order or recalling it, that also shows up. Let's go on to the next page. You can see there's quite a few pages here, and there's a whole big section here of clear sales. Now, as somebody who does demos a lot, you wind up doing a lot of clear sales. Clear sales is another opportunity for fraud. So customer comes in, you ring up the items, you see the total is $100, you take their $100, and instead of finishing the sale, you just hit the clear sale button and poof, it's gone. That's, by the way, a lot of stores will insist, you'll see signs where if they don't give you a receipt, this is free. That's because they're trying to ensure that the system records the sale. And if we print a receipt, at that point, the only thing they can do is post-void it. So now we've recorded it. But maybe the customer doesn't care about a receipt. They just want to take their stuff and go away. So to avoid that, every single time you do a clear sale function, we'll show you the register number, date, time, the total amount rung up at the time of the clear sale, and who did it. Now, there's no reason codes associated with clear sale, but you can at least track it back to the individual who is logged into the register, and you can see the amounts and when and where they did it. And here's more clear sales. Get a total at the bottom. This is an unusual one, kind of a newer one. You can now create inventory records on the fly in the register module, and we'll show you that as well. And that's it. So that's the register detail report. Strongly encourages to be run daily. As we're going to see in a second, any of the reports you see here can be set up to automatically run at the daily closeout. And it is a very good idea for many of these to be in that category. In fact, we provide you with a default list of them that include, among other things, the register daily and the register detail. Okay, let's go over a few more reports, and we need to get out of this and get on to the rest of this before our time runs out. There's a number of reports that break things down in a fashion like this. So this register, today's sales, percent of total. All registers, today's sales, percent of total, week to date, month to date, and year to date. Okay, in the case of the hourly sales report, what we're doing is we're doing this by the hour of the day. So what you're seeing here basically is, especially if you're looking at the percentage side, is when are my stores the most busy? Maybe I want to staff more people when I've got 18% of my sales happening between 2 and 3 versus 2% of my sales happening between 7 and 8. So this gives you a snapshot, and now this is only today's. Really what you'll want to do is look more over on the right-hand side of this thing to get an historical perspective. But this does show you when you're buying, when your customers are buying things by the hour with percents of totals. And we have a number of reports like that that break things down differently. For example, here's the same thing broken down by the department. So obviously this is not quite so much a staffing issue, but it's still of great interest to a store. How much of my sales are in haircuts versus products? If I'm a salon, I want to see that product number up a lot higher than 4.97% because I get a lot more profit based on that. So maybe I'll turn around and give my employees a better commission rate for selling products. But again, all registers, week, month, and year to date, percent of total, in this case, broken down by department. And we can do that by the tax type as well. So in this case, we have a state and county tax, and especially at the end of the month when we need to figure out how much we need to pay the county, it's a real good idea to have this report printing so that we automatically have a printout of what we owe to each of the up to 15 taxing authorities storekeeper and store manager support. One last one in this group is breaking your sales down by the tender type. So what percent of my sales are cash versus check versus Visa versus gift cards or gift certificates? Again, broken down week, month, year to date with percent of total. If you do any kind of verified tenders, and that includes credit cards and debit cards and gift cards, they will show up here on the verified credit cards report. On a demo system, that is a little bit tough to get a lot of real data in there, but in a real system, this is an important report that'll show you date, time, the transaction number, the amount charged, the credit card type, the credit card number, but you'll notice there's about 6 or so X's in the middle. This is PCI here. We are not allowed to print that full number. In fact, we don't save it even after the end of the day. Expiration, record only, and what the response we got back when the sale was verified. Then you get your totals at the bottom by the different types of tenders that are verified, and those should correspond to your batch totals. Okay, we're going to skip past some reports and go on to the electronic journal. This is one of the most important reports in the system. This is a complete listing of every sale that has happened either today, a quick look at the last 10, or over any arbitrary date range. And it shows you everything. And you do have some options to filter by invoice number, by customer number, by the transaction type. For example, I could look, for example, just at my post voids. I could look for a from to amount range if I'm trying to identify a particular transaction that I know the total of. I can filter it by the tender type or the register or the employee, but mostly you just don't worry about any of these things. You either look at the today's version to see every sale that happened today, or you can look at a date range. So let's go ahead and see every sale we've done here since the beginning of the month. And you get everything. What they sold, the date and time, cash register, invoice number, employee who took the money, the total, of various things like the total amounts and total discounts, how they paid for it, who, if it was linked to a customer, who it was, and who that customer number was. So here's a sale with a little more interesting information here. You can see, for example, that on September 3rd at 12:45, Susan Johnson bought 5 adult haircuts for $30 each. That totals $150. She paid us $750 in taxes for a total of $157.50, which she paid for with cash. And we do support split tendering, by the way, and you'd get additional lines here if we split tendered. So literally everything that happens is recorded and is not changeable. The only thing you can do to a sale that has been recorded, as I mentioned earlier, is post-void it, and you'd get a special note here. You'd get a V after the invoice number, and you'd get some detailed information about the post-voiding of that sale, why they did it, and who did it, right on the electronic journal. So basically, everything that you do in the system is recorded, is auditable, is transparent. Sometimes we get folks, I have to mention particularly up in the Northeast, seem to be quite more interested in this, who are looking for ways to beat the system and to essentially not have to pay the taxes they're supposed to pay. Sorry, we don't do that. Those customers, we just rather stay away from. We want to do things legitimately and honestly, and the electronic journal gives legitimate store owners a tool to prove to any auditor that they're doing exactly the right thing. Okay, let's look down some more. I'm going to skip over some less used reports here. I think I missed one, actually, I wanted to show you. Inventory movement report up here. This is kind of like the inventory movement report in the register, in the inventory module, except instead of allowing you to sort it by top to bottom and select a date range, all this is doing is showing you everything that was sold in your store today. So we sold 2 color corrective highlights. Total was $29.95. We even show you the profit and the margin associated with that. So this is all that we've done during the store, during the day. Grand total of 58 something, discount of 84, or it's going to be tax of 84, no, cost of goods of 84, so the profit is 58.15, and boy, this salon is doing pretty nice on its margins here at 98.5%. But it's a nice report to be able to take a look at what's happened during the day. It's only for today. If you want to look at things that happened in the past, there is the movement report in the inventory module itself that will let you report on anything over any date range. There is an appointments report. I'm not going to go over it right now because we've gone over it several times in the appointment books webinar, but do know it's there. Here's our gift card / certificates report. It comes in 2 flavors. The transactions we've done today. So there's that issuing that we just did a few minutes ago of $100 to number MBS 001. The select range version of this actually shows you all the credit cards you have in the system. If you leave the from to blank, it's going to show you everything. You can filter it by a from to certificate number range. This is all of them and shows you when it was created, when it was last issued, or, and this is new, reloaded. So if you put some more money on there, that's the date it's going to show up now. The total amount that you've paid into the card, the total amount that you've redeemed, and therefore the balance. For example, this first card here was issued for $100. They've used up $37, so we know there's $62.90 left available to use. In the register module, by the way, if we select this balance function, we can quickly check on the balance right in the register of any card. So there's that $62.90. And I think I'll leave it at that at this point. There are, as you can see, quite a few more reports here in the Transaction Manager module, but we've covered some of the most important ones. And it's getting close to our hour limit, so let me finish up with a couple of final thoughts and then open it up for questions. So I mentioned we have a ton of these reports. It turns out with the Setup Closeout Report function that you can select which reports will automatically print at which of the 4 different types of closeouts we have. So we have daily, weekly, monthly, and yearly. And for each of those, you can independently set what reports are going to print when. So normally, we're going to print the registered daily report. And by the way, there's a set of default reports. So when you start, that's what you get. And by the way, you can restore those defaults, which I just did. So normally we're going to print the registered daily, the sales by tender, the department sales, the taxable sales, daily general ledger, register detail, and remember that's very important. Verified credit cards reports, very important. If I'm in a salon, I definitely want to print the appointments report so that I get at my closeout a listing by stylist of all the appointments they have tomorrow. So when you come in the store in the morning, you have already a sheet to hand out each of your stylists of what they're expected to do today. Notice also that each of these reports comes in 3 flavors. I don't want to print it, I want to print it, and I want to save it. Okay, so anytime you print it, we are saving it off in a file that's used for reprinting, and these closeout reports can be reprinted for up to a year. Now, bear in mind the data, like for example the sales and the transactions that these are based on, are retained forever, typically. But the closeout reports themselves, the images of those reports, are actually also separately saved, in this case for up to a year. And we have cases where customers, or let's say a store owner, for example, wants to get a printout of the department print report, but they don't want the clerk who's closing it out at the end of the day to see it. So what they can do is set it to save. And what that'll do is it will print the report to the disk file, so it can be reprinted, but it won't print it on the piece of paper. So then the owner can come in the next morning and reprint the reports and take a look at it without having people see it. Each of the closeouts has its own separate set of reports. You'll notice, especially as we get into the weekly, monthly, and yearly, that a number of these are grayed out and are not selectable, and that's because the system enforces a hierarchy, if you would, of closeouts. So, for example, if I do a weekly closeout and the system looks and sees that you have not done a daily closeout yet, it will do the daily closeout for you automatically first, and then it will do the weekly. So by the time we get to the weekly, the registered daily report, for example, since the day has just been closed out, has no information, so there's no point in printing it. So a lot less reports available, but for example, on a monthly side, you definitely want to print that taxable sales report and make sure that it's going to be there for you. So that's how you set up your closeout reports. And when you're done with your selection, you hit save, and that's it. Okay, so the final button here that we haven't covered is closeouts themselves. And as I mentioned, we have the 4 different types of closeouts. We also have the option to reprint those reports that were either printed or saved. And they come in 2 flavors. One is the shift closeout. That's the one where you balance your cash drawer at the register, in which case you give us a date and you give us an employee number, because we don't want to print them out for everybody. We're looking for employee number 1 or what have you. And you hit print, and it'll print. And I haven't done a shift closeout today, so presumably it's going to tell me you can't find the file. Anything else, daily, weekly, monthly, or yearly, is classified as an other closeout. The employee part disappears because there's just one for the store. And again, you select a date, hit print. If you did a closeout on that date, you would then get your standard Windows printer dialog and can print the closeouts to there. Doing the closeouts themselves is generally nothing more than hitting daily closeout and OK. And at that point, it's going to print reports. If necessary, settle credit card batches. If you have the appointment book, it's going to go through the day's appointments and set them through no-shows and do a whole bunch of housekeeping. But basically, you as the store person don't have to do anything. You just hit the report, hit OK, and you're good to go. Okay, so that concludes our summary of the, or overview of the Transaction Manager module. And I'd like to open it up now for questions. And